Frozen. I mean,
Ooh.
hi everybody.
Did everybody miss us?
I've missed being on here.
Me
It's
too.
been so long and it was not supposed to be. But you went off and had to go have surgery done. Selfish.
I know. So selfish.
And I don't even know. Life just kind of got crazy and the girl under the stairs moved out. And we've just kind of been getting our footing of now that we can somewhat leave the house. And I don't know, it's been kind of crazy. And then with everything else, which is why we're joining here tonight,
Yep.
I felt just a little like disoriented, you know?
Yep. Absolutely. Yep. It really has. And definitely the past few weeks have been, I don't know of another word except full of sorrow.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of pain and grief and swirling emotions and swirling thoughts. So that leads us to tonight. Yeah. Normally we want to bring a lot of humor and laughter into your homes, but we're going to shift for not just tonight, for a little while.
Yeah, I you know, within this lovely community that's on here.
Tell us when you get here, by the way.
What's that? Yes, tell us. Yes, please talk and interact.
I told them I would say,
ask questions, do all the things like we normally do.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like I had been very kind of MIA from social media. And several of you sweetly have reached out and been like, is everything okay? And because I know I've talked about kind of like mental health stuff in the past, and I'm like, I promise I'm fine. I'm good. You guys are so sweet to reach out and ask. And yeah, I have distanced myself from it for several reasons, but I feel like the most profound one is just I've been trying to make sense of everything that's been going on in the news, just like everyone else has been. And I, like you said, just to kind of echo what you said, it's felt just very weighty. My heart has very much been grieving. I have felt just overwhelmed with wanting to do something. I feeling frustrated that these are conversations that we've had for years and nothing has changed and nothing looks different. And I feel excited and hopeful about what this could look like for lasting change. I mean, every gamut of emotions, right? I feel like I have felt it. And then you add this whole COVID thing that we've had on top of it, and it's just kind of exasperated it. Yeah. And when that happens, I do personally, and I think a lot of people probably can relate, but I go in my head. And it's hard for me to speak out on something until I've wrestled with it and gone to God with it and figured it out. Just because I want to be responsible about speaking truth and sensitively doing so versus just spouting out kind of in the midst of it. And so, AJ, you and I were talking about this earlier, and then we're going to get to our guest that we have tonight. But you know, what happens, I feel like, is when we get overwhelmed, whatever it is. I mean, it could have been, you know, you have a major work project that's due.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when we get in that headspace of just feeling so, we don't do anything, right? It sends us into inaction instead of actually figuring out a game plan.
Paralysis of analysis. Yep.
Exactly it. And so our hope for tonight is several things. One, that we can start a dialogue and a conversation, because maybe this is the first time that you've really been in that. And we want to help, I guess, give perspective and share stories and experiences. Yes. Our ultimate goal is that we would all walk away from here feeling like we have something, some simple act that we can go do for wherever you're at in this kind of process of wrestling through it.
Yeah.
That you would leave here with something tangible, right? That you feel like you, because I think everything feels very out of control right now.
Yeah.
Everything, right? We've been out of control for months, haven't we?
Yeah.
I mean, it's felt like we haven't had control over anything.
Yeah.
And then you add this in. And
the reality, though it feels that way, hi, sweet Heather and Sarah. I'm so glad you're here. The reality is that we feel that way, but we do have control over how we respond, how we open our minds and our hearts and our hands. And Kim and I were saying at the beginning, what we want and what our prayer is that for both of us and for our everyone watching and listening, that the posture would be one of humility and literally like sitting, maybe even literally opening your hands while you are sitting there as a way to relax and listen and to lay down all of the noise, all of the everything going on, maybe the position you have right now on a certain area, so that you can be fully present and listen to the experiences of our guests. I feel that is something that we owe our guests, that they deserve the respect of active listening and empathy.
Yeah.
And so, that's our prayer tonight.
100%. I think whatever pretenses that anyone has brought in, or whatever we are personally, right? We each have our own stuff that we bring to these conversations, and what if we could just kind of lay those down and really just not come into this with any sense of having already decided where we're at, but that we really can be open-minded. It's the same thing I would say to someone who's wrestling in their faith journey and trying to figure out what they believe. Of just, all I'm asking is that you show up today, that you have an open mind and an open heart, and just want to hear. And because what if there's a different perspective than what we have believed our entire lives? And I know God's going to show up in that every time. So without kind of hearing from us, we wanted to bring some perspectives to you guys that have lived what we're talking about, and that AJ and I wouldn't be able to bring to you, obviously, because we have lived just different lives, again, because of our race. So AJ, I would love for you to introduce who we have coming on tonight.
Yeah. So our guests tonight are especially near and dear to my heart, and to my family. This is Nathan and Deirdre Courtney. And Deirdre, hopefully Deirdre's sister, Jennifer, we're trying to get her on, but we might have some difficulties.
I think we might be able to make it happen.
Yeah, but Nathan is my brother, and Deirdre is my sister-in-law. And they are from Houston, Texas, and Jennifer is from just outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma. And Nathan was in the Navy. So their experiences that they've had throughout their life are ones that I did not have. So the perspective and hi, Jennifer, I'm so glad it worked.
I know, me too.
I know, I was sitting there, I thought you could see me.
Oh man, I can't thank you I can't thank you all enough for doing this and sharing with us. I know it's not easy. We're talking about trauma. So that's never something that's easy to talk about. And so we don't take this moment for granted whatsoever. Can each of you, to start, just maybe share a little bit about who you are? Nathan and Deirdre, you're married, but a little bit about who you are, where, like the type of environment you grew up. That might be a great place to start.
You want to go first? You can go first.
Okay, I guess I'll go first. Hey, everybody, I'm Nathan. I'm the brother.
Right.
How are y'all doing?
You know my dad. You know he looks like identical to my dad.
Just like that. Hair a little straighter.
So crazy.
So, I was born in San Antonio, raised in Houston most of my life. I've grown up here in the Acres Home, Spring Branch area. If anybody's from Houston out there, you know, Acres Home is a tough neighborhood. And so it's just, you know, I'm speaking from those experiences from that. I joined the Navy in 99, and I served for 8.5 years. Got out, came home, wanted to spend time with my wife and my kids, and I am here today. AJ, I don't know if you really want me to speak on, you know, the whole finding.
Oh, you can. You can.
Okay. So I really didn't know my father growing up. I should say I didn't know my father at all growing up. And he obviously didn't know about me either. And through the miracle of DNA, I was able to find him and unite with a father, mother-in-law, and sisters that I never knew I had. So I always say I'm an only child, and then somebody will correct me now and go, "You're not an only child anymore."
I love
But
that.
you made me a middle child, so
Oh, that is unfortunate.
I feel like my whole, like, you know,
I just flipped it upside down.
Yeah. Like the hierarchy there, like it's just totally shifted for me. I'm not the oldest.
First, she's a middle child.
I need your help because I don't know how to be anymore. Who am I? I'm the middle child.
The middle child's wild, so just so you know. I certainly lived up to it.
Not me.
So yeah, and so that's pretty much it about me.
For myself and Jennifer, we grew up in a small town, probably an hour west of DC in Virginia. It's called Front Royal, Virginia. We're pretty much close to the top of the triangle, if that's how you want to look at it. The town we grew up in was predominantly white. We had a little bit of diversity, and I do mean little. We had like maybe one or two Indian families, a few Asian families. It wasn't that diverse, but a lot of the friends I tried to make were Italian, Black, white, all different ethnicities, Puerto Rican, because I like the whole like rainbow and everybody coming together as one is always how my heart's been. I don't like the whole separation. I don't like being disliked because of how I look on the outside. I'd rather for you to not like me for my personality, or maybe we don't match that way versus how I look on the outside. We grew up in a 2-parent home, and our dad passed away due to a motorcycle accident when I was 3. Jennifer was 8. We are 2 of 5 daughters. Our older sister at the time was 14. The next one was, how old was Tammy at the time? 10. So Jennifer was 8, I was 3, and then our younger sister was 2. A lot of changes happened after that, but we still somehow managed to keep the house that our parents had bought all these years. So we all grew up there, and we were probably what they would consider, I guess, you think middle class, Jennifer?
Yes,
What would be considered middle class?
we were
Um,
definitely middle class.
I know, like later on in probably around middle school, I think my mom had gotten injured on the job, until like finances may have gotten a little tough back, during that time, and I don't think she went back to work until my oldest sister was a senior in high school. I think. I mean, my youngest sister was a senior in high school, so we
Yeah.
went all through middle school and high school with her kind of being in and out. She did like missions trips and stuff like that. Always had us in the church. Uh, that's just part of it. So I'm gonna pass to Jennifer. She can explain a little more.
Oh, I thought you did great. My name's Jennifer Keller. As Deidre told you, we grew up in a small town in Virginia. It wasn't big on diversity, but we stayed in a part of town that was called Blacktop and Black Bottom. So that neighborhood was predominantly Black. I don't know, maybe Lisa Norris's family might have been the only white family in that neighborhood, I believe, back then. And then there was another neighborhood on the other side of town that also was a Black neighborhood, and that's where our family lived as well. So even back then, there was almost like a dividing line of, where people lived as far as financially and that kind of thing. But we, as far as in school, we were definitely a minority. There weren't a lot of Black kids. I remember getting to the high school and thinking, okay, this is, we were all coming together. So you had all those grades coming together, and there just seemed to be more Black people being together at that point. And I remember feeling like my friends started to kind of disperse. Before that, I was hung out with a lot of white kids, but at that time, it seemed like they kind of went their way, and then I kind of went my way. And so with that town being like that, it really, it taught me a lot about, basically being able to be flexible and being able to adapt when things change. And I think too, once we left the town and got to other cities and saw more people that looked like us, it was definitely almost very endearing. But as far as our background, our grandmother, our great grandmother, she was biracial. And so we had a lot of fair skinned people in our family. So, so we were definitely diverse all the way around and able to be very accepting as we grew up as well. So.
Thank you guys for sharing that.
Yeah. Do you want to ask the question, Kim?
Yes, hang on. Sorry. I lost my list of questions. Whoever wants to kind of jump in and answer these as we're talking about them, you're welcome to. But can one of you speak on how young you were when you experienced racism as you understood it for the first time?
Okay, I'll start. So I went to an elementary school here called Inwood Elementary, and it was in an area of town that used to be predominantly white, but was starting to transition to a more African-American Latino community. And I remember I was in the third grade, and we got to school that morning, and they dropped us off, and you could see on the gym wall outside of the gym that somebody had spray painted the N-word across it, and they had put ends. I don't want to say the word, but get out. They wrote that, get out, and then they said they had KKK underneath it. And I remember looking at that because, even though me at being 3, being biracial, I didn't know what biracial was. I didn't know, I only knew my mother. I grew up with, her. And, she didn't really, there was no divide there. I played with all kids. And so when I saw that, I didn't, really know what it was. And I had to go home and ask my mom about that. And the look on her face, she was just kind of like shocked. She was just like, where did you hear that word? Um, what did you see? And so she kind of broke it down to me and said, um, the KKK is basically an organization that doesn't like black people, and explained it to me in a way then. I can't remember the exact words, but I just remember like thinking, why would somebody hate me that doesn't even know me?
For me, I think mine might have been a little younger than that. I think preschool, again, around 5, and then like in your face, probably 5th grade. Um, I had to be anywhere from 9 to 10 since I started school early. And the boy had called me the N word. And I believe I probably cried.
To you?
Um,
To you?
yeah, correctly. I was the only black kid in the class. A lot of times when they started talking about like black history and stuff and bringing up slavery, they would all like turn in their desk and look at me. And I'm just like, I'm not a slave. Yes, I am a descendant of a slave, does not mean that I'm a slave. So don't assume that I'm going to be a slave, because that's never going to happen. And it was rough. I mean, and then it continued on after that. I mean, throughout school and stuff. So, um, Jennifer.
Well, for me, it was probably 2nd grade. I remember I had joined the Brownies at school, and at the time I didn't have a Brownies outfit. I don't think I ever got a Brownies outfit, and all the little girls were dressed in their little Brownie outfits. And I remember feeling very left out because I didn't have a Brownies outfit, and I'm not sure why I didn't have one. But this one day after a meeting, my mom, I guess, had asked another parent if I could ride home with them, and then she would pick me up from their house. And so I remember going to their house, them having dinner, and never inviting me to the table. I think that was my first experience of feeling like, I'm hungry type thing. And I think that was my first experience. My second being when I was in about 4th or 5th grade, I believe, and one of my elementary school friends calling me the N word. And she didn't call me to my face, because I probably would have hit her. I will say that, because I was a pretty feisty middle child. But hey, I was.
Are you saying that's how that's what I should?
Yeah.
No, stay the way you are.
It's in there. And so she actually said it to my friends. She said, "You're going to let that N stay here and not me." And so my friends came back inside, and I said, "What did she say?" And they didn't want to tell me. And then they finally told me, and I, on the inside, I just felt like, she's supposed to be my friend, and here she's calling me the N word. But I didn't fight her. I actually was, contained myself at that point, and I was feisty back then. So, but I just remember being hurt by the fact that she was supposed to be my friend, and now she's calling me the N word. And then to hear adults say it, like, your friend's parents use the word, "Oh, but no, not you. You're not. I'm sorry, not you, but them." And so that was hurtful to experience in elementary school as well.
That's these examples, like from a young age too, I think are so, thank you for sharing these. And I think these are a great example of the systemic, like, whether we realize it or not, some of the the biases that are kind of rooted in us that we aren't aware of. Because for a white woman like myself, I did not grow up being called any sort of name except for maybe short, because I'm literally just short.
But
Or
nothing that had to do with the color of your skin.
nothing. So it's to even, and you know, I think I saw it in high school, but was never a part of it. And I had friends, still do, many Black friends and people that I would call, you know, as close as family. And so I have often, even now, reflected back and thought, as I've gotten older, I feel like when I was younger, I had more of that childlike spirit where I was naive. I think I was very naive to things going on. And now, as I'm older, I can look back and see racism not happening to me, but happening to my friends around me that I didn't even realize or think about at the time. You know, just biases that didn't faze me at the time because I felt that I was just that naive. Do you feel like, so that was the youngest age that you can remember experiencing it. Now, is there a particular instance that you feel like really stands out in your mind as overtly racism that you experienced? But Deirdre, I know you have a close member who passed away. You don't have to share about that if you don't want to, but that's kind of the example that's coming to my mind.
Okay.
You want me? Okay.
Yeah.
So for me, I will have to say this. Me personally, I feel like my light skin and me being biracial has given me a little bit of privilege other than my friends that were of darker skin color. Um, and so I have experienced racist incidents, but they haven't been to the level that I think some of my friends. But the one that kind of, and it just popped in my head, the one that kind of stands out to me is recently I was um, I was going to school at the University of Houston, and I had met a guy there, and his father was from Turkey, I believe, so he was of the Turkish descent. So talking to him, met him, hung out with him. We started hanging out, becoming close, group studies together, all of that. He was closer to my age. And so one night he wanted to go out, and I said, okay. And so I invited my high school friends, uh, Kenneth and Jason. Kenneth is a little dark, he's dark skinned, and Jason is light skinned black. And when he saw Kenneth, he pulled me to the side and he looked at me, and I'm just going to be frank here. So I didn't use the word earlier, but he goes, "Why'd you bring that dark skinned nigga with you?" And I just looked at him and I was like, "What are you talking about? Like, what is that? What does that have to do?" I was like, "I'm black too, just because he's dark." And so I kind of looked at him and I was like, I didn't want to tell Kenneth and I didn't want to tell Jason because I knew they would have fought him and I knew they would have beat the crap out of him. And so I just kind of like brushed it to the side. And after we left that night, I basically just stopped hanging with him altogether because I didn't want to be associated with that. And it really kind of opened my eyes because he was real cool, down to earth, and we were just hanging out. And he saw Kenneth, and it's like a light bulb just switched in his head, and he just like went left. And I was like, "Who are you? Like, where does that even come from?" So it was just one of those situations where I'm very guarded about just new friends in general. So that's something that's most recent for me. But as a kid growing up, I would say that there have been multiple times where the police have pulled me and my friends over for things that just seemed minor. I can remember a time it was me, Kenneth, and Jason actually. We were riding our bikes down the street, and these cops pulled up, ran up on the curb, opened their door to block the sidewalk. And as they jumped out, they pushed Kenneth off his bike, told us to get off our bike, threw us in handcuffs, and had us sitting on the curb. And so they started searching Kenneth's pockets, and then the cop supposedly heard something on the radio, and he goes, "It's y'all lucky day." And then he uncuffs us. They jump back in the car and take off.
So there was no reason. There was
None at all. No, they just pulled up, handcuffed us, threw us down. They didn't rough us up any, but it was the first time I ever had an experience like that with police officers. The second time, I was driving my aunt's van, and I had Jason and Quinn, which is Kenneth's brother, in the van with me. And so I was dating a girl, and I parked the van down the street, and I ended up walking to her house. As I'm walking to her house, I hear screeching. I turn around and look, and I see a police officer jump out the van, run up to the passenger side of the van, and point a gun in the window. And so I was scared because I didn't know what was going on. So me not thinking, trying to get back to my friends, I run down the street. I'm thinking they think the van is stolen. So I run back down the street, and I'm like, "Hey, I got the keys. I got the keys." And the cop looks at me, points the gun at me, and tells me to get on the ground. So I get on the ground, and like it's middle, and if anybody's been in Houston, you know, summertime, it's hot here. Mm-hmm. So the concrete is stored, it's hot, it's burning. And so they've got us on the ground, more cars pull up. They throw all of us in the back of one of the squad cars. And then we sat there for a couple of minutes, and then all of a sudden they pulled us out, and they said, you know, "What are you doing here? Where are y'all from? Blah, blah, blah." And then they were like, you know, "Get out of here and get home." And so we ended up leaving. And it's something we laugh about now, but as I think about it as an adult, me running up with those keys and my hands up like that, I could have died. That cop could have perceived the keys as a weapon and shot me and killed me. I wouldn't have been here. I would have never met my wife. I would have never had my kids. I would have never met my dad or my family. And, you know, it's one of those things where now when I interact with the police, I make sure that I'm not perceived as a threat. So I have to roll my windows down, keep my hands visible. I ask questions before, you know, I make any movement in the vehicle, because I don't want to, you know, die. I mean, I've been pulled over multiple times, but I'm afraid that this could be the time where it goes wrong, or this guy may not be in a good mood today, and I could end up, you know, either, you know, being beat up, in jail, you know, stuff like that. So
it's
I think that was a little bit long.
No, I appreciate you sharing
the fact that, you know, they don't see like a father of 4 who served in the Navy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they don't know that. Mm-hmm. They don't see that. It's really sad. Sorry, go ahead, Kim.
All 3 of you sharing about your childhood experiences, and even Nathan, your recent experience at the university. It does remind me, and AJ and I will talk more about this later, because I do think it is a powerful resource to help people understand. But it reminds me of the interview that we recently watched between Christine Caine and Dr. Anita Phillips, and of just the dehumanization that we have done to the Black community, that we have done to historically multiple groups of people. You know, that Hitler did it to the Jews, and of just how in naming a group of people with something other than who you are. So things like the N-word, how it dehumanizes someone, and over time it allows somehow psychologically people to be like, well, we're not doing damage to a person, right? This is something other than a human being. And she even goes back to reference in slavery, how slaves are counted as 3/5 of a person. You weren't a full human. And just how that has implicitly been carried on. And so I just, when I hear that even today, that word is still being used in that way, it is so dehumanizing. And I have never, to go back as what you called me, I was called a lot of things growing up: 4 eyes for glasses, and metal mouth for braces. I was never called anything that dehumanized me because of the tint of my skin. And I think when we talk about white privilege, we're talking about a lot of things, but I do believe that is one of them. Is that we have lived in a place of luxury where that has never been something that has been a bad or derogatory, a dehumanizing thing. I don't know. I hope that connects with someone, or because that's all I can think about now when I hear those words. It's just how it literally is its goal is to make you less than a human being that is loved and cherished by God. That you are not worthy of the same thing, and so therefore we have this derogatory label to make it easier somehow for someone to be cruel. And does that resonate? Would you agree, or am I so way off?
No, you're right.
No, you're fine. I shared something yesterday on my Facebook page because probably about 15 years ago, I took 2 teenage girls to Alabama, to Huntsville, Alabama. That's where we were staying in that area, to go to a Christian conference. And while we were there, the conference was great. I mean, there was thousands of teenagers. There were, all kinds of different groups that were there. But outside of there, when we went out into the community, we experienced racism. I had one teenager with me, and she was biracial. I had the pastor's daughter with me, and she was a young white girl. I think she was about 13 at the time. And so we went to restaurants, me not thinking anything of it, maybe being naive, went into restaurants and everybody turning around and looking at us, and me thinking, okay, I'm, hopefully they don't spit in my food. I was thinking, okay, we're in here now. I felt very uncomfortable, but I thought, you know what, we're just going to eat. And then we went to another restaurant where people were coming in. They looked at us, turned around, and went out the door and did not eat at the restaurant. And then once we did finally sit down and eat, people were watching us. It was so uncomfortable. They just kept watching us and watching us. And it was almost like being an animal at the zoo, as if, why are you here? Why are you even in our space? And so I shared a story how another night we went to Sonic, and we were laughing. We had a great time in the Lord. We were, just enjoying ourselves. And a truck pulled up beside us, and it was a white man in the truck. And I told the girls immediately, stop laughing. And I was very serious for them to stop. And I stopped immediately. I knew I had to, because I didn't want to bring any attention. We had already been to these restaurants that clearly were whites only. And I just didn't want to bring any attention to us, because I had to keep those girls safe. And so I told them a couple of times, listen, settle down. They're still snickering. And I couldn't get out of there fast enough. And then I watched all the way going back to the hotel room to make sure we weren't being followed. And so once we got inside the hotel room, I could hear a truck outside and could see lights. And I'm like, oh my goodness, it's the man from Sonic. And I just thought about that yesterday, because my family and I traveled to Arkansas, and I was pulling up to a Sonic, and it immediately hit me and took me back to that moment of me being so afraid. Yet I know who I am in Christ, but yet my skin could get us killed. And so I had said to the one young lady who she was biracial, I said, well, next time we need to make sure you wear a shirt with your dad's face on it, and I need to wear a shirt with my husband's face on it, and on it says my dad's white, my husband's white. And I said, we laughed about it for a minute, but then we thought, you know what, we might really get killed, we better leave that alone. But that's what my thought process was, like, hey, we're okay, we're not trying to hurt anyone, we're just here to eat, that's all we're trying to do. But I just remember feeling so almost like, and it's not the first time I went to a restaurant and people have turned and looked at you. I mean, you get pretty used to people turning their heads and watching you. I mean, it's pretty common. They watch us in stores, it's pretty common. You become so used to it that it doesn't bother you anymore. My husband and I, when we first got married, I had went to an office for something. I can't remember what I went there for, but the lady that was our babysitter, her son worked for the town paper, and there's still, racism in the town that we're from. And so in the paper, he had put my husband and our picture from getting married. And so while I'm in that office, I'm sitting there and I'm waiting, and I'm doing whatever. And so these two white ladies walk in and they sit down. And so the one lady who was older, she was like, oh my goodness, it's a black and white, it's a black and white. And so her friend was like, okay, like she wasn't, getting beside herself. And so her friend was aware that there's a black person sitting right here with us. And I already knew my picture was in the paper. So the lady goes, well, and she's very pretty too, to her friend, is what she said. And so I didn't say anything, went ahead with my appointment, came back out. And on the way out the door, I looked at the lady and I said, by the way, thank you, that's me on the back of the paper, and went on out the door. But it just shows you that, we've become almost invisible. And so for me at this hour, when we're talking about the things that have happened, to our cousin Jamar, who has no justice, this man the officer is still back out on the streets, back.
Jennifer, I don't know if, can you just, you or Deirdre, just briefly share about that? Because I don't know if
Do you want to share?
Sure. Okay, so Jamar is our cousin. He was a few months older than me, so now he would be 40 years old. 2006, he was 26 years old, expecting his first child, and on his way home, he was stopped by a police officer. Well, he was pulled out of the passenger side, I believe it was, and the officer he thought that his cell phone was a weapon, and so he was shot in the shoulder and killed on his way home. Later on, we found out that the officer who had killed him was also our uncle's old classmate. The police never reached out to the family immediately and said, hey, your son has passed away, none of that. My uncle had to find out through people that had seen it occur on the street. And so our family had marched for justice for him, and he never got any justice. And the officer now is training up new officers in the Harrisburg, Pennsylvania area. And I guess because social media wasn't as big as it is now, and maybe because he wasn't in a bigger city, that nobody pretty much knows his name or knows his story. And a lot of our cousins do a really good job of sharing on his birthday or the anniversary of his death. And I remember leaving here to come and visit our family up there in Virginia, and then we were planning to go to Pennsylvania. And so, like, one of our sisters was like, "Oh, wait for me. We can go on Monday. I'll take off." And I was like, "Okay, that's fine." To this day, I kind of wish I had followed my heart. So, like, if something like that happens now, and I feel like, hey, this is my plan, this is what I'm going to do, I try to stick with it just because of that fear of, hey, I could have seen him one more time if I had went on the day I had chosen. So,
and he was expecting his first child. He was expecting his first child.
Yeah. So he has a son that is, I think he's a few months younger than our kids. So he'll be 14 this summer. So he's grown up without a dad. Our uncle does a good job of trying to step in and fill in the gap of that missing piece. But I mean, can you really replace your true dad now? But let's see what else. I think that's pretty much it. Unless Jennifer, you want to add something to that?
Well, and that's what I was saying, how he, there's no justice for him. And how many other Black men have been killed with no justice? Mm-hmm. Nothing, because we become invisible. And even at this hour with George Floyd and, everyone, and I shouldn't say everyone, many people are wrestling with, like, how I feel, how do I become a part of this? And then on the other side of things, people want us to almost be quiet, but our voices are being louder. And I think at this hour, that's what we need to do. We need to speak up. We need to say something, even when it may not be popular in certain circles to do that. We need to speak out on it so that people are aware. I have 2 Black sons they're grown at this point. My son, the oldest one, when he was a teenager, was pulled over, I can't tell you how many times, and, frisked and had to do all kinds of things that, it shouldn't have happened. And to me, it just doesn't make sense that, here is racial profiling going on. Black men are being killed. And then we have people almost mocking us, saying all lives matter. We understand that all lives matter. But what we're trying to do is not be invisible anymore to people who don't see us, as you said, Kim, as human. And people even say, we're all the human race. Everybody's saying we understand that. We understand that. What we're trying to do is get other people to understand that and to have empathy and to have compassion, not sympathy, but to have empathy, because we deal with this on a daily basis. We deal with the looks on a daily basis, and we've become accustomed to it. But at this point, we need to speak up and shine a light on it, because yes, my kids are going out in this world, and do I care about the fact that, if they get pulled over because of the color of their skin, which my son already has been. Where we live now, my other son, we live in a suburban area, and he's pretty well known because he's great at sports. But what happens when he gets outside of here? What happens when my oldest son drives across the country, and he was moving to Colorado? I tell you, I called him a bunch because I didn't want him to stop off at certain places, and he just kept it moving all the way across the country. Can you imagine? You just keep it moving because you shouldn't stop because it may not be safe. And so that's what we're trying to do is to be able to share that and to be open with it instead of running away from it. We can't run from it. We're in Black skin. We can't run away from it. And so when our friends are trying to run away from it and act like we don't exist, I mean, it does become a slap in the face. It does become a mocking. And so I just feel like right now, like everyone who even has any compassion or empathy towards Black people should step up and say, I don't understand. I think that's probably one of the best things that I've had so far is one young lady, I'm not really very close friends with her, but she said, listen, I don't understand. She goes, all I can think to say is I'm sorry, but maybe that's not the right word to say either. But she said, teach me, I want to know. And so you know what she's been doing? She's been doing research. She's searched out Black-owned restaurants in the area. She's been looking at protests. This past Sunday, there was a protest here in Tulsa, and I don't know if you are aware of the Tulsa race riots that happened 99 years ago. In 1921, they burned 35 blocks to the ground where Black people lived and resided and had Black-owned businesses. They called it Black Wall Street because they had their own. The area was just all Black people. And so a young man was accused of doing something to a white girl, and they came in and burnt 35 city blocks to the ground. And there's never really been true recovery. The area is called the Greenwood District. They're bringing awareness. There's Greenwood Cultural Center. Over 300 people were killed in those riots. And so, you know, even in that, where people are yelling about the riots that are going on right now, did anyone think about what happened 99 years ago in this city and even speak out about it? You know, so that's the kind of thing, you know, educating ourselves, even for myself, educating myself so that I can learn to speak. It did take me some time to be comfortable in my Black skin, you know, and I just refuse now to be quiet. My friends can say what they want to. They can put, I think this past Tuesday when we had Black Tuesday, and so the rebuttal has been putting up a blue circle for their profile picture. And so the continual slap in the face, we're over it, you know, at this point. But what we are going to do is we're going to stand up. We're going to stand up for our kids. I don't believe in burning things down and going in the same direction of what happened during those Tulsa race riots and killing over 300 people and burning down, 35 blocks. I don't believe in doing that because then we're following the same pattern in which that was done 100 years ago. And I know it's not all Black people rioting and looting and doing all that. You know, I understand that. But as Christian, Black Christians or Christians and being in Black skin, I feel like it is our place to step up and say something and not be quiet. And even for my Christian friends who are uncomfortable, we're uncomfortable too. We've been uncomfortable for a minute. You know, when we get treated like the project child, we're uncomfortable again. You know, here's my Black friend. It's uncomfortable for us. We don't like that. And so at this hour, I'm not going to be quiet. I'm not going away. And I'm thankful for all the men and women who went before us and were trailblazers. I'm glad Martin Luther King Jr. decided not to just stay in the pulpit and not share and make an impact on a country that needed it. But we still have a lot of work to be done. And I was sharing with my other sister, you know, Harriet Tubman, she went out on her own freeing how many slaves? Like, she went out there and she did the work for the Underground Railroad, you know. And what if she didn't? What if she didn't listen to everybody else? Get back in the field. No, she was determined. And
she was breaking the law at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you think about it, she was breaking the law at the time.
That's right. That's right. And so, but she did it. And I think each one of us have to do it too. And we have to push past our circles that want us to be quiet. You know, and I just feel very strongly about that. I think I've said a lot. Okay.
No, we appreciate everything that you're sharing because it does help us understand, which is the point of this. And I had a couple of things that kind of came in my head while you both were talking was, one, I keep getting this picture in the Bible of how, and Jesus continually
he would always step between the persecuted and the persecutor and defend those who were hurting. My cry out for my own white community is that we would rise up and be the ones who are standing between the persecuted and the persecutor. I feel so convicted that we have not done that. And now is the time for us to step up. And one of the most powerful pictures I saw was at a protest with Black community standing, and in front of them was just a wall of just white faces that were standing between them and the police. And just how powerful that is, of just, we are here with you. We're fighting with you. You don't need us to save you or rescue you. You're not powerless. You're not weak. I don't want any of that to be inferred. But that it is time for us to do exactly what Jesus did over and over. And just what you were saying of, we know all lives matter. But right now, we are standing up because Black lives are being persecuted and dehumanized. And so we are calling that out and saying enough is enough. We are here. There is no more. This is where it ends. And over in the Bible and the Gospels, that's what Jesus did. He said, enough is enough. And I am here, and I'm standing with you, and I'm fighting with you. And so I do want you to know that you do have a community of people that is doing those things. We are listening. We are leaning in. We may not ever fully understand it. We are going to do everything we can to. And even without fully understanding it, we are not letting you fight this on your own anymore. And I think the most grief for me is that we have not woken up for this long to be able to call it and see it for what it is. And I do grieve over that. I want to say I'm sorry that we have not. We haven't seen it. We haven't sought to understand it. And we haven't done a single thing about it that has made lasting change. And but we're not powerless either, and we can do something about it now. And I am intrigued. I think it would be beneficial for people to hear. If you wouldn't mind sharing, both of you guys have kiddos. Can you explain how, to the best of your understanding, how parenting for you has looked different, that we take for granted? Are there certain things that you've had to teach your children? I think that's valuable for the white community to understand. Again, when we are talking about white privilege and whatever words everyone wants to use, but in practical things, how I raise my 4 babies, how that gets to look different than how you have to teach them and raise them. Do you have kind of some examples or things that you've seen to compare that to?
I'll start. So this has actually been a topic in our house recently. Our oldest is 18. The second oldest is 16. Our twins are 14. So our 4 kids are going to all be in high school next year. And as you get into high school, you start meeting new friends, you start going out more, you're out and about, you're interacting with people. Now you're going to parties. And so these are all social situations that they've never been in before. And so a lot of what I've been trying to do recently is just to prepare them for the world. We have a very I try to make it a point for them to understand that sometimes the cops don't have your best interest at heart. And they may pull you over and they may do something, but you may run into a cop that is just looking to either make a quota or doing something to, hey, I showing I'm tough on crime and arrest you or, put you in a situation where you can self-incriminate yourself. So I've been teaching the kids that the burden of proof is on them. And I've told them when they are, in one of those situations, whether they're arrested or anything, to keep their mouth shut. Just tell them their name and to ask for a lawyer, because anything else other than that, they can try to flip it and, use that against you. And it started because of the Netflix series about the Central Park kids. And so it made me realize that these kids' rights were taken away from them. And even in the face of their parents being there, they still were not given, the due process to them. They were coerced into giving these confessions and then in turn spent years in prison. And I don't want to see my kids in that situation. So I have to teach them that, because at the end of the day, I tell them all the time, I said, yeah, you may be light skinned, but you're still black. You're still black. And when that cop sees you, he sees a black person. He sees the N-word. He sees that. He's not looking at you and seeing a human. He sees the N-word. And for me, I worry about my kids. Yes, they're homebodies now, but I worry about them, how they're going to interact with people, how they're going to handle certain situations, because I lived a different life growing up. I was in a single parent household and I was able to roam freely. So I got to experience a lot of people at different times in my age. And so I know how to interact with people. I've been in, situations where I could tell things were going to go south, whether it be a fight breaking off or anything. I've experienced all of that. My kids haven't experienced any of that. They've lived a very sheltered life, very sheltered life. And so, I just worry about that. I worry about their interactions with the police, and then just, interacting with everyday people that may not like them because of, what they see on the outside. So, we try to have those conversations with them. We don't, sit here and, talk bad about another race or do anything like that. My family is very multicultural on my mom's side, and then me going into that, it's like, I have multiple cousins that are half black, half white. I've got cousins that are half black, half Mexican. We are a very multicultural family, and so it is. It's just tough for me sometimes when you see certain situations and people act a certain way, and then it's like, if you were not put in that situation, you can't understand it, but you just want to kind of like brush it away and push it underneath the table. So,
And I know for you, Nathan, I mean, you serve this country, so
right,
you have when it comes to our servicemen and women, you have a deep respect and loyalty and commitment.
Right.
So I imagine that's a really difficult conversation to try to prepare them to be cautious and be careful.
Right.
And at the same time, we are thankful for our servicemen and women.
Right.
And you are one of them, know?
And that too is one of the things that kind of shocked me after I got out the Navy, because there were people that I used to hang with in the Navy, and we hung out, went and drunk, went to different ports, and had a very good time. And I got out the Navy and we became friends on Facebook, and I just started noticing certain things that kind of threw me sideways, because they would say certain things, and it was kind of like they were being racist in a way, but if I said something to them, they were not associating me with that, but they're still talking about the black race. And so it was some kind of disconnect there. And so that was one of the things that kind of threw me off about that too. So it's not just, you know, hey, um, I knew you, you were my friend in the Navy, you're the black guy that I was friends with. They still have um, like deep inset, not inset racist ideas that they may not know they have. And there has a disassociation between associating me as a black person and then what they see on TV. Because the same guy that's in the hood or wherever doing something, and I could have been that person. I just made the choice to join the Navy. There's no difference between me and him. We were presented with both the same problems in life. I just may have chose to join the Navy. He may have chose to go the street route, and he's being, you know, treated this way. But why did he go the street route? Because he didn't know of any other way to go. He's trying to make money. He's trying to do this. He's trying to do something for his family. And when the system is set up against you, you just try to do what you can is best for you. And at that time, if you're a young kid with no parental supervision, or you don't have a authoritative figure or somebody in your life that you can look up to that can kind of guide you in that right direction, you're going to go down the wrong path. I could have gone down that path,
Yeah.
you know? So I think it's all, you know, it's just a perspective, and people just have to have an open heart, you know, when they are, you know, looking at these situations. And I'm sorry I took us off track. I know we were talking about the
No, you're fine. I'm
do I talk like this? Do I talk like that? Does he do that?
You do. You put that program.
I don't want to share in case she's ends up on here as one of our guests her story, but I know she'd be okay with me sharing a couple of examples. And I'm wondering if Deidre or Jennifer, you can relate or agree with her experience raising two Black boys. But she gave me an example. My first encounter, and I don't want to go in detail, I might have in fact already shared this in a different story, but my first encounter, honestly, with even having a glimpse of it, is when we were fostering in Chicago, and we had a Black boy that was with us. And I noticed the looks he would get in comparison to my white child, who they were at the same age. And it's not because he was acting out or bad behavior. It was my first encounter of really seeing that he was getting stares simply because of the color of his skin, and being watched for bad behavior. And so I remember calling one of my dear friends who I went to college with and saying, you got to help me unravel this, because I'd never like experienced it, seen it. You know, we loved this boy like he was our own. And it was so hurtful. And I remember her saying to me, that's why I think this is such a powerful conversation, because a lot of the community that is tuning in are parents. And I think this is when it first just shook me and gave me perspective of truly how different our lives look simply because of the color of our skin, that I didn't have before, is around how differently we have to parent. Things that you have to teach your children out of life or death that I don't have to teach my kids. And a couple examples she gave, you know, she said, Kim, I don't let my boys play in our front yard with water guns. You know, there was an incident, I believe it was in Ohio several years back, that I vividly remember because we weren't that far away from it in Chicago, where and I hope I'm not getting the facts wrong, but I guess that a boy was gunned down right in a park, a child, because he was playing with a water gun, and it assumed that it was not a water gun, and things like that. I don't, my kids freely run outside and shoot each other with water guns. And I don't think anything of it. It's innocent play to me. Or things like she said, Kim, when we go to the grocery store, I have to teach them not to put their hands in their pockets when we're walking down aisles. Because what if someone just looked at them and assumed that he shoplifted or stole something? I've never had to have, the most stares I get is because my kids are absolute idiots. I mean, they're insane. And they're throwing tantrums and rolling for. That's why I get stares. People are like, what? And she kept having more of them. Like that's why I get looks when I go. Because, or even I've had my own children who, they're 3 years old and I get to the car and I'm like, did you just steal that? Like you just walked out of the store with that toy or that candy bar, and I've had to walk back in and be like, I'm so sorry. I did not know that, and how different that would look if the tint of their skin was different. The assumptions that would be made, the intent that would be inferred. And so I do think this is such a powerful topic and question to me for people to truly understand. It is different. It is different. I don't know. I don't want to take away from your stories because this is not meant to be about my experiences. But I'm wondering, Jennifer or Deidre, Nathan, thank you for sharing that. Do you have anything like that, or do you have shared experiences with her, or have something else again that just helps us understand it does look different simply because our skin color is different?
Right. So our oldest, Nehemiah, it was just him and Nathan at the time. We had like a hurricane coming here, so I traveled to Chicago. I was supposed to go all the way to DC because my mom had got me a train ticket at the last minute. So we rode a bus from downtown Houston to Longview, Texas, a train from there to Chicago, and I was supposed to take another one from there to DC. By the time I made it to Chicago, I said I can't go any further.
Amen. Yes.
I was in the Navy at the time. We had bought our house in Houston, but I was still in the Navy up in Chicago in the training command. So when she got to Chicago, I
said that's enough.
Yeah, enough is enough. Yep.
Nathan was 1 and Nehemiah was 3. So I think we had made it to Longview, and there was an older white gentleman, and Nehemiah kept touching his stuff, and I kept saying, stop touching his stuff. And, he's 3, so he's going to touch. Mm-hmm. He was our wandering child that liked to roam around. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, stop touching his stuff, get over here, sit down. But, after a 12-hour bus drive that shouldn't have taken 12 hours, but you got a million people on the road, he was ready to, roam around and, stretch his legs and stuff. And so finally, after asking him multiple times, I popped his hands and he overreacted and cried like I had just killed him. And the older gentleman was like, you didn't have to beat him like that. And I'm like, I hit his hands, like, calm down. And I said, if I don't correct him now, at 16, this is going to become a problem. And now you don't want me to correct him at 3? And he just was like, okay, kind of step back into his place. But an older Black lady was like, you did the right thing, because that's exactly what's going to happen. He could touch something at 16 and it can turn into something bigger than what it was. Mm-hmm. And another fear I had with him in middle school was we gave him a key to be able to let himself in and out of the house. The other kids were all in elementary school at the time, and he would continuously lose his key. So I guess he got pretty hip to the fact that he was constantly losing his key. So he unlocked the window in the back of the house so that he could crawl in through the kitchen window. And so once we figured out how he was getting into the house, we had to let him know you can no longer do that. So my biggest fear was that, let's say the neighbor behind us didn't recognize you and he saw you climbing into the back window. What do you think is going to happen? You're in 6th grade, you have no ID, you have no key, you're climbing in the back window. A police officer shows up. The last thing I want to find you is dead in your own home. because you didn't have your key.
Mhm.
And so then we had to come up with an alternative for him to be able to get in and out of the house, so he wouldn't lose his key.
Heather, one of our friends asked a really good question that I'd love to ask you, but she was talking about for, families with white kids or any other race, really. Are there specific conversations that, we can have with our children now that you feel they need to hear that will help them
Yeah.
become advocates
Yeah.
and understand bias when they hear it and when they see it? How do we help teach them what is right now?
I'm going to make this quick
Okay.
because I know I can talk.
Oh, sure.
So I would honestly just suggest that when these situations arrive, it's a tough conversation to have with young children, but it is a necessary conversation to have with young children, because if you can educate them at a younger age, as they grow older, they will be able to advocate and maybe do the research on their own and realize when certain things may not seem right when they're with their Black friends, Hispanic friends, or another person of color. It's tough to have these conversations, but Black people have tough conversations with their kids all the time about how you have to act around police, how you have to act in certain situations, how you have to do this, how you have to do that. And it is taught at a very young age. So, it may be a tough and uncomfortable conversation to have, but it's definitely necessary. And you just, if you see something on the news, call the kids down, you know, pause the TV, show them what's going on, and explain to them why this was not right. Or, maybe watch some movies that can, uh, you know, give you the visuals so you can have that conversation as the movie is going along. And then you can pause it at certain points and say, hey, why is this like this? There's a bunch of things that you can do, but definitely the communication and conversation have to be there.
I honestly feel like for a lot, when we feel that discomfort,
Mm-hmm.
we need to pay attention to it, because there's a reason we feel that, right? And instead of, kind of like what we were talking about at the very beginning, instead of running away from it, whether that's discomfort in conversations with our kids or with our friends or with other family members, instead of running away and then being silent, like what you were talking about, Jennifer, like we need to lean into that discomfort and think about why we're feeling it. Try to understand it. And I love the posture of what you said that young girl took with you, who just said, teach me. Like I feel like that should be all of our posture right now. Like, I want to learn from you. So many times in my life I have seen, and I have been, because I have worked with in inner cities and urban areas and for a very long time. And I have seen white people help mentor Black kids, and I think that is important. I think it's valuable. I'm not saying it's not. But I would almost like to see, I was telling Kim earlier today, I would like to start seeing the reverse. I would like to start seeing white people say, teach me. Like, I want to learn from you. I just don't want you to learn from me only. Like, that posture, I would love to see that posture reverse. So I think something that Kim and I talked about was really important, is if you could share something that we can tangibly do.
Yeah.
Saying, I just want to learn. Will you help me understand? Teach me.
Yeah.
Are there
I know we could and we might just have to have you guys all back again for another one. We could talk about this topic for obviously so long. This doesn't do it justice. But yeah, as we kind of wrap up, and then guys who are listening, please don't go anywhere once we do wrap up conversations with Jennifer, Nathan, and Deirdre, because we do kind of have some closing thoughts and some resources that we do want to give you guys. But could each of you be willing to share something like an action step, or how can we help make the Black community know that we are listening, that we are standing with you? What is something, just even from your own personal perspective, I get that you're not representing everyone, that anyone listening, that we could kind of take away as something that would make you feel loved and seen and heard and known, something that every single human being wants to be.
You want me to
I'll
start?
let the ladies first.
I think the one thing for me has been that you hear me, you know, that I'm not just your Black friend, you know, but that I'm a person, that I am someone with feelings, and when the community goes silent and you're basically telling me to be quiet, I really feel like that, to me, that just shows me a person's heart. And so for my friends who have stepped up and maybe sent me a private message because they didn't feel comfortable, you know, speaking out in a public post, and just saying, hey, I hear you. Thank you for sharing that. I didn't see it that way before. Some years ago, I tried to speak up on something, and, you know, what ends up happening is that the community starts to look at a person's history and say, oh, well, they had a criminal history. It doesn't matter. Every person that God created is important. And I think for me is that if we can be a voice at this hour, and that our friends can actually come alongside us. I'm not saying that this is your cross to bear. Actually, I believe that some of us, it is our cross to bear right now. You know, it is time that when the baton gets given over to us, what will we do with it? And for me, it's a generation behind me who, if I don't say something, if I don't speak up, we will continue with police brutality. We will continue with people not having justice. We will continue being called names. We'll continue to be a face that is invisible to most people, and who will continue to say, every time we say Black Lives Matter, if it makes you cringe on the inside, then your heart needs to be checked. You know, we're not saying so much that an organization, what we're saying is that, you know, we're a people. And now the narrative is that we're all Americans, all lives matter. And then it just puts us back into this box of saying, we don't see you. And then the other thing is to say we're colorblind. Well, and then, you know, here you have, I want to see like God does. Well, you know what? God made all the colors. He made my skin in my mother's womb. He knew every day I was going to live before I ever lived one of them. He knew I was going to go through racism. But you know what? He knew the day would come that I would find my voice and be a voice for the kids that are behind me, a voice even to white children, a voice to, I have white nieces and a nephew, you know, being a voice for them. You know, for them to be able to stand up and say something. And you know what has been very powerful is the few family members on my husband's side, that have even said anything, that even care enough, you know. And we, like I said, we experience racism on every turn. It's pretty easy to pick up when you've dealt with it your whole life. So even in the tones, even in how you're talked to, how you're dealt with, how you're belittled, we recognize racism. And it's high time that we step up and say, you know what, I'm not going to be quiet anymore. I'm not going to give it a pass, and I am going to speak up on it. I'm not going to keep letting it just roll off my back. And I know the word of God. I was brought up in a Christian home. My mom, took us to church, and I take my children to church. But the thing is that I'm still going to speak up, whether anyone likes it or not. I have to speak up and say something so that everyone behind me, that they're going to learn from the things that we've been through, so that we don't keep letting history repeat itself. And that's what we've been trying to do. We've been trying to erase history. We don't want to talk about slavery. We don't want to talk about what happened in the Civil War. We don't want to talk about these things, but yet we need to. The conversation needs to be there so that we can make a difference. And it starts with each one of us showing up, being very present, not hiding, and not giving people passes anymore. I'm not doing it. To me, I'm tired. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of just letting it slide. I know I've went through something where it's been years and years and years, just little jabs, little jabs, little jabs. And you know what? I can't do it anymore. I have to confront it. I won't keep an account of a suffered wrong. I'll forgive, just like I've done before. And even some of the people that I was talking about before, where it happened in elementary school, I forgave that girl. We became very good friends. So we're a very forgiving people. But today we have to stand up. We still forgive, but we are going to be a voice at this hour.
Jennifer, I love your passion. I love, love, love. And I wish I could just bottle that up and dose it out to everyone. I heard a couple of things. One was just, it is time, not just for you to speak up, but for all of us to rise up and speak up, and not being so concerned with what everyone else is saying, or who's going to unfriend you, or who's going to have a negative comment to make. Or and enough is enough. People's lives are at stake. So let's get over ourselves. And the other thing that I really heard you say is just be a real human being, as far as just be my friend. Just be a genuine person. Don't show up just to simply pick my brain and to say, hey, help me understand this, and then disappear in a few weeks when the news has subsided and the protesting is dying down and whatever. But if you're gonna walk in it, then be my friend and stick it out with me until the end.
Right, definitely.
And I think that is something, hands down, that I know, I hope is speaking to everyone else too, of just you guys are not a cause to be fixed. That again still is dehumanizing you guys. It is just, let's just be people who absolutely love each other and want to be there for each other, and just be a human, right? So anyways, I could go back and replay everything that you just listened to absorb it all. But those are kind of the big ones that I'm walking away with. So I hope I didn't miss it.
Nathan and Deirdre, do you guys have some ideas on tangible things that people can do? Ashley also. Sorry, go ahead.
I definitely think having open conversations with your kids is a good one, and amongst yourselves, amongst your community. Speak up where you can. If you see something, say something, definitely. And we really just need people to stand up for us and stand beside us. And like I was saying to Amanda earlier, I said, they may not be receptive of what I have to say, but they may listen to what you have to say. So if you be a voice for me, I appreciate it. But we definitely it's a time to definitely stand up, speak, and take action. So,
yep.
I would agree with Jennifer and my wife. I definitely believe that if you see something, say something, speak up. Be a friend, not just for a moment in time, but you know, a true friend, right? It's I think it's really difficult because, and I keep saying this because I know this is the main thing that sometimes puts people on reserve when it comes to this issue is your comfort, right? And so you are comfortable living people are comfortable living a certain life, and when you start to disrupt that comfort, it becomes very difficult to adjust to that and to try to understand where this new world is. But if you can kind of put that to the side for a second and just open your heart up and kind of just listen to your friends, people of color, your black friends. If you don't have one, you know, it's easy. Just go out.
Like me. Hey,
Hey,
want to be friends?
hey, how you doing? Just start up, random conversations. They can lead uh, a lot of different places, and make friends. Go to. I know. So it's a funny story. So I remember when I was in Chicago. So me and two other guys, they were white, and we went to this like hole in the wall place, and it was in the basement of a restaurant. Like people are upstairs eating, and then you just walk in, and then you go downstairs, and there's like a whole club going on. And so we get down there, and literally, it was just a sea of black people. And we walked in, and they looked, and they were like, "I don't think we should be here." I was like, "Oh, this place is jumping. Let's go."
Home.
I was like, let's go. So we had a drink, we had a good time. They were like, I just don't feel like we should be here. And so their comfort, they had lost their comfort, right? And so we got in there and I told them, nobody's messing with you, nobody's looking at you. I was like, we're having a good time. Y'all like this kind of music. I was like, we're fine. And so, but their comfort wasn't there. So what did we end up doing? We ended up leaving. And so it's one of those things where you have to look at that and you got to kind of put your comfort to the side, and just really just like open yourself up and, just go out and make friends and interact, with people of color, black people, and really try to get to know them. If you can, make more friends and then have your friends become, with their kids. And, those are learning situations because when you're with them, those experiences help you grow and you can see it in perspective. So that's what I would say.
Yes.
I love that. Thank you guys. I cannot thank you enough for coming on here, for being vulnerable, for sharing your hearts and heart experiences and putting things out there with no fear. I just cannot thank you enough. And before we kind of AJ and I wrap up, would it be okay if I prayed over you guys?
Oh, sure thing.
Okay. Jesus, God, we thank you that no one is forgotten, God, in your name. And God, that no one is less than. We thank you that you show up and fight for us. God, even when we can't always feel it, that you faithfully show up every time. And I just ask that we just with such boldness, God, with such conviction, would live that out, that we would then be your hands and feet to show up. God, that we would walk alongside the Black community. God, that we would be put out into uncomfortable places deep in the water, that we would just go with boldness and no fear, God, knowing that you have complete control over everything, Jesus. God, I ask that as we walk away from this, that Jennifer and Nathan and Deidre, God, that they would just feel just people come around them and just stick it out with them. God, that it wouldn't just be just someone passing by. It wouldn't just be someone just kind of in for the cause and the hype and then disappears. God, I pray that over everyone in the Black community, that every single person would know that they are not alone, God, that they are heard, that they are seen, God, that we seek to understand, Jesus. That is our heart's desire, that we would see them, that we would understand it, God, and then we would go and do. That we wouldn't just talk about it, God, that we would then take action and be sensitive to what you are calling us out, God, that we would find our yes in the midst of these injustices, God, and then we would go and act on it. God, we know that all things work for your good. And so as weird as it is, I thank you that this is all rising up right now. God, I thank you that it's coming to the surface, that we can't escape it, Jesus. There aren't any distractions that can take us away from this. God, we are in it. We have to face it. It's not going anywhere. God, and I just pray that we would face it head on, Jesus, and there would be lasting change, that we truly would bring heaven to earth. God, that earth would look like as it is in heaven. That we would be united, God, and that we would just love each other well, just like you love each of us. In your victorious name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you. We will be praying for you. We love you guys, and
I can't.
I know, virtual hug. Please come back and join us anytime, and we are in it with you. So just because we're not having this conversation every night does not mean that we are not still fighting.
Love you so much. Thank you.
Mwah. Okay.
I kind of hate you for praying.
I just wanted to say a couple of things as we wrap up this. Hey, I feel like we've won like some kind of award. This is like our longest one that we've done. We should have started at like 6 o'clock and we could have kept going.
Yeah, I don't know how many people have stuck with us, but thank you.
I know we still have some people that have stuck with us. I feel like we should send out like parting gifts or something, like thanks for showing up. I did want to say a couple of things. We wanted to say a couple of things. So one, you guys had some great questions, and thank you for just all of your love and support and your comments for them being on here. But as far as resources, which I know is what we're just all seeking, right? Is okay, great. I'm in. I want to understand more. So how do I do that? And AJ and I were talking about that earlier because again, like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I know what's happened for me, and I know other people who have spoken to, right, is it just feels like we do have such an influx of information and we don't know which way to look and who to listen to and what's true and what's distraction. And so we just feel overwhelmed. Is that we wanted to create resources for you guys, but we didn't also just want to dump them all on you tonight, because I feel like that would be just perpetuate what you're already feeling. And so AJ and I are going to kind of get together. We've been kind of reaching out and asking and looking for resources. It's certainly not an exhaustive list by any means. So we would love for kind of people to add to it. But we are going to create kind of a resource list that you can reference. And please be patient with us. I'm hoping that will be up next week. And you'll be able to find it on my website. I'll make sure that I post it here so that you can kind of go. It just felt like the easiest kind of place for you to go access it. But we will break down books that you can read, shows you can watch, resources for your children. So books that you can read with them. The Hate U Give, I actually just ordered. That was one that was highly recommended to me to read with my older kiddos. So books like that. We will have on there list of suggested people within the Black community that are activists, that are leaders, that you can go and start following. I have to say that's one of the biggest, most impactful, simple, honestly, changes or adjustments, I guess, that I made to my social media feed was compiling, and certainly I still need to add more, but compiling people who are within the Black community that have a voice that is different than mine. And go figure. And listening to them. And it's been hugely powerful. So things like that, people that you can go follow, organizations that you can start supporting. we will have some articles in there that literally give you things that you can go do. So if you are passionate and want to be an activist and that kind of thing, who do you write? Who do you reach out to make some policy change? So we're going to have all that at you or at your disposal. That is our goal. And again, though, as AJ and I were talking earlier, we don't want you to become so overwhelmed with things that you just halt. And so what I would suggest is just take something and just do that one thing. You know, as I mentioned just earlier, just what is your yes in this? You know, I'm so passionate about finding your yes for today. What is God asking of you just today in this moment? And go and just do that seemingly simple task. And this is no different. Just what is God asking you in this today? And it literally may be reading that article or calling that friend or watching that show or writing that letter. But just what is your yes for today? Because you can't do it all. And
I think it's important. Sorry, Kim. I think it's important to just say to get on your knees and seek God with what you should do.
Yeah.
Fast about it. Pray about it. I don't want prayer to become this thing that sounds passive to us. It's a very...
That's just that there is then a follow-up action to pray, ask, and then go do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
We hope this is helpful. This is not the end of this conversation. Please ask questions, things that you would like to learn more about. We are learning alongside you. We are gaining as much perspective as you are in these conversations. And we would love to know. You guys had great questions tonight. Thank you. Please keep asking those so we can continue to bring people to you that can hopefully have answers, or we can go round up some answers or some perspectives and bring them back here. So I think that's all I have. Do you any other closing thoughts?
No. I think above all else, there is a pastor that I greatly respect called his name is Dr. Darius Daniels. He's a Black pastor. He's brilliant. And he talks about a few things that you can listen, learn, and believe. Not just believe in our Black brothers and sisters, but believe them. Mm-hmm. When they say something is painful, let us not minimize it. Let us not silence it. It is painful. Let's believe them when they say it's painful. That's all. Those are my ending thoughts. Learn, listen, and believe.
I love that. And I think it's I don't know if this resonates with anyone else. You and I were talking about this earlier too, if it has become, I'm just going to own it. I really had to work hard to continue extending grace and patience, that I know everyone isn't in the same spot that I'm in this. And I wasn't always in this spot either. And so just that we are extending grace to other friends and people who genuinely want to understand, but just aren't there yet. I'm not talking about putting pearls before swine, but I'm talking about people who genuinely have a heart that is trying to unravel it all too. And let's just be grace-filled people and kind to each other, and just try to teach each other, right? And ask questions and seek out people who are in the Black community to get that perspective. So I would say if you have any action step today, it would be to reach out, like Jennifer was saying, and be a friend.
Yes.
And if you don't have people who are in that Black community, that you would just truly get on your knees and pray that God would bring those to you, bring people who are different to you to give you different perspectives. And also, I got to say, though, I think more times than not, it's just about boldness. I think most of us know someone who is in the Black community, and just having boldness to reach out to them and say, hey, let's get together for a coffee. You know, do you have time to chat on the phone? And really seeking them out. Not because of their color, but genuinely because you want to be a friend. So if you're doing it just to ask questions and hang up the phone, like that's not what we're talking about. I'm talking about sitting alongside them and genuinely wanting to understand and be a friend. So I think that's it. I know we could go on, and we will have more time to talk, but thank you guys. And I hope that you have a wonderful weekend. And also, I'm attending my first protest tomorrow. I'm excited to stand with you guys tomorrow to do that. Okay.
We love you.
Good night. Love you guys. Missed you. And it was good to be back and hear from you.
I've got her back, guys.